It's supposed to be just a game. 90 minutes of passion. Glory for the winner, heartbreak for the loser. But what happens when the game turns into a war? A real war, with tanks, planes, and thousands of dead soldiers. In 1969, two neighboring countries in Central America, El Salvador and Honduras, went to war over a football match. It's known as the Football War, or the 100-Hour War. But was it really about a game? Or was football just the spark that lit the fuse of a bomb that had been waiting to explode for years? The background: a ticking time bomb. For decades, the relationship between El Salvador and Honduras was a powder keg. El Salvador was small and overpopulated. Honduras was much larger with plenty of land. Over 300,000 Salvadorans had migrated to Honduras looking for work and a better life. They made up nearly 20% of Honduras's peasant population. This created tension. Hondurans felt that Salvadorans were taking their jobs and their land. The Honduran government, facing economic problems, needed a scapegoat. So they passed a land reform law that kicked Salvadoran farmers off their land and gave it to native Hondurans. Thousands of Salvadorans were forced to flee back to El Salvador. They arrived with stories of violence and persecution. The media in both countries fueled the fire with nationalist propaganda. By June 1969, the two nations hated each other. They were on the brink of war. And then came the World Cup qualifiers. The matches. From pitch to battlefield, El Salvador and Honduras were drawn to play each other in a 3-game series for a spot in the 1970 World Cup. It was the worst possible timing. Game 1, Tegucigalpa, Honduras, June 8, 1969. The first game was in the Honduran capital. The night before, Honduran fans rioted outside the Salvadoran team's hotel. They made noise all night, throwing rocks and breaking windows. The Salvadoran players barely slept. The next day, exhausted and terrified, they lost 1-0. After the game, a young Salvadoran girl named Amelia Bolaños was watching the game on TV at home. When El Salvador lost, she took her father's gun and ended her own life. The Salvadoran government turned her into a national hero. Her funeral was broadcast on national television. The president and his ministers attended. She became a symbol of national pride and sacrifice. Game 2, San Salvador, El Salvador, June 15, 1969. For the second game, it was El Salvador's turn for revenge. The Honduran team was subjected to even worse treatment. Their hotel was surrounded by angry mobs. Dead rats were thrown at their windows. They had to be escorted to the stadium in armored cars. Inside the stadium, a tattered Honduran flag was burned. El Salvador won 3-0. The Honduran fans were attacked as they left the stadium. 2 of them were killed. The violence spilled over to the border. The two countries cut off diplomatic ties. Game 3, Mexico City, Mexico, June 26, 1969. The final game was played on neutral ground. The tension was unbearable. 5,000 police officers were deployed to keep the fans apart. The game went to extra time. In the 101st minute, El Salvador scored. They won 3-2. The two countries were now officially at war. The war. 100 hours of conflict. Less than 3 weeks later, on July 14, 1969, the Salvadoran army launched a full-scale invasion of Honduras. The war had begun. For 100 hours, the two armies fought fiercely. Air forces bombed cities. Ground troops battled for control of key towns and roads. It was a short but bloody conflict. Over 3,000 people were killed, mostly civilians. Thousands more were wounded. And over 100,000 Salvadorans were forced to flee Honduras, creating a massive refugee crisis. On July 18th, the Organization of American States negotiated a ceasefire. The war was over, but the damage was done. The two countries remained enemies for over a decade. Conclusion: was it really about football? So did a football match really start a war? Not exactly. The war was caused by deep-rooted issues of land, immigration, and poverty. The two governments used the matches to distract their populations from their own failures. Football wasn't the cause of the war, it was the trigger. It was the final match that lit the fuse. The passion and nationalism of the game poured gasoline on a fire that was already burning. The football war is a chilling reminder of how easily a game can be twisted into something ugly, how nationalism can turn to violence, and how political leaders can use sport to manipulate their people and lead them into conflict. It's the story of a war that lasted only 100 hours, but it started with a single goal, and it left thousands dead.